Welcome into Legal Access. Every week we have a different topic under the law to give you access to what's behind the scenes. So if you have any questions today, automobile accidents is our topic. Everybody's been in a car wreck once or twice. Hopefully you haven't been hurt in one, but if you have, make sure and give us a call today to find out what you should and what you shouldn't do to make sure that you take advantage of everything that should be coming to you. But if you have any questions, today is the day to give us a call. Phone number is on your screen, 843-848-8080. Automobile accidents, that's our topic here today. And here on the panel to answer those questions for you from the McGuire Law Firm, first of all is Ian McGuire.
See you, Dave.
Also is Brittany Jones from McGuire Law Firm. And on the end of the table, for no specific reason, Robert Sansberry. Hey, Robert.
Last but not least.
That's right.
Absolutely. And it's great to have Robert back with us. Fantastic attorney. He handles what our topic is today, auto accidents, of course, but he also does a lot of other things and does them quite well. Interesting about Robert, he used to be on what we jokingly refer to as the dark side when he represented insurance companies. But actually, Robert, you learn a lot about the tricks of the trade. I'm sure that it probably is very helpful to you now, that having had worked on that side, right?
I like to think so, at least.
Yeah.
No, it was a great experience, and it's good to see both sides of anything. And certainly you take away sort of how the sausage is made, you know, how the claims are evaluated and how they look at things. It's a good experience to have.
And I know your office is on Oak Street also, and as well as doing personal injury. I know you're an excellent mediator, but what else does your practice handle other cases?
Well, I have an associate attorney who's excellent. She handles criminal defense. And then the other primary area I have is LLR licensing defense. So doctors, nurses, things like that get in some trouble with the LLR board. I'm happy to help them too.
And that's a niche kind of, but a very important one, especially when things go awry for people in the medical field. So I always like you to mention that because, you know, it is, we're not allowed to use the word specialty, but it's very unique and area of law, and you have a background in I know you handle those very well as you do with your trial work. So great to have you back, buddy.
Now, as far as automobile accidents are concerned, if you got just damage to your vehicle or what we call property damage, something you're probably going to be handling yourself. But if you've been injured in that wreck, that's when you need the help of an attorney. And I know, as we've said before, it's kind of self-serving. But if you're trying to handle that yourself, what is an individual going to miss out on, or what kind of mistakes are they likely going to make if they try to handle personal injury themselves?
Well, there can be all kinds of things. You know, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
So,
And you know, I think the easy thing to say, you know, when someone is injured, they should at least consult with an attorney. If it's a minor situation, you know, the attorney can tell them that it's not going to cost them anything. Just about anybody in our field that does this type of work is going to have a consultation that's free. So take advantage of that. And then, you know, the list is long of reasons to have an attorney. The biggest one, though, is you know, the ammunition that an attorney has, if they're trial attorneys, is that if they don't like what the insurance company is telling them, they could do something about it. They could take the case to court. If they're an attorney that doesn't have a history of going to court, that's not going to work as well. You know, we try to have people on the show that are trial attorneys like Robert, because to me there's a big separation in the ones the attorneys that go to trial and those that don't. But you know, otherwise the insurance company is going to tell the person what they're getting on a case, as opposed to these are my harms, these are my losses, this is what a fair or optimal recovery would be, right?
And you talked about ammunition, you know, giving an attorney ammunition to help you. One of the mistakes I see in a lot of cases is when early on and I hate to say that this way, but it's almost being too trusting of the insurance carrier.
Yeah.
And they're just doing their job. There's no doubt about that. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes they want you to unilaterally sign forms to give up all your medical records, and they can kind of go get those behind your back, or they might want you to give a recorded statement kind of early on. But then what you'll learn is they're not making the other side do that.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're not, and if they come to an attorney after that fact, it can be detrimental to us to handle their case because the damage has already been done. So I would say that's a big mistake that I think of.
Yeah, and the adjusters, as Robert alluded to, they have attorneys, you know, at their whim, they could pick up the phone and talk to one of their attorneys at any time, and they're doing that. And so if someone's not represented, they're at a severe disadvantage. So
Right.
I can't emphasize enough, as you said, Dave, self-serving or not, there's a lot of good attorneys that you can call, but call one of them, and get some advice.
And if you're trying to handle things yourself, they might give you an offer that it might sound like a lot of money because you're not used to dealing in those kind of numbers. But at the same time, if you're an experienced attorney, you'll say, oh my gosh, that you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So.
And there are different types of coverages that you may have or that might be on a policy that if you don't know about them, then you don't know to ask for them. And the adjuster's not just going to offer them to you or tell you, hey, by the way, you should ask for this. Not usually at least. So, and if you don't know they're there, then you don't know to ask for them or to check for those things. So.
And especially with somebody who's seriously injured, it's such an important thing. Brittany's 100% right. They're not going to call you and say, hey, we got this umbrella policy also.
Right.
That's something the attorney's going to figure out and take steps to make sure that whatever insurance is out there is available and can become part of the claim.
And a lot of times when somebody's been injured in a wreck, they say, I don't want to have my insurance company involved whatsoever, so keep them out. But if they do that, they're making big mistakes potentially as well, right?
Yes, that's one of my, I don't want to say pet peeves, but it might be when I hear people say this, because oftentimes these people have UIM coverage, and we talk about UIM a lot, which stands for underinsurance, which is an optional coverage that a lot of times people pay to have this UIM, this optional coverage, but still they say, I don't want to use my insurance. It wasn't my fault. I don't want to use my insurance because I don't want my premiums to go up. And the truth is that your premiums can go up for any reason at all or no reason at all. But just because you're making a claim on your UIM, if it wasn't your fault, it shouldn't go up because you're using your UIM. But if you are injured and you've exhausted those liability coverage limits, then you should absolutely use your UIM. It is the exact scenario, the exact reason why you've paid to have this coverage. So that's why you have it. That's why you pay for it. Is for those reasons specifically. And so if you're not wanting to use it, you may as well just quit paying for it and not have it. But you pay for it to protect yourself, in those scenarios. So you should use it.
and in that, not to interrupt, but in that same vein, a lot of times we see people with collision and comprehensive coverage on their own policy.
Right.
And certainly I understand they always want to go through the other driver's insurance, and I get that 100%. But what I think that part of my experience from the other side is seeing from the other lens of things is that what will actually happen is if the other driver is at fault, you can go through your own coverage to get it quicker. Usually they deal with you a lot easier, and sometimes they're even going to give you a little more value because they're insured.
Right.
And then that policy will then what's called subrogate against the liability carrier, so they'll get paid back eventually. It's just a quicker method to reach it. So,
Tell you what, we're going to run to a break here real quick because I think one of our crew members here has to get away and do some other important stuff, lawyerly stuff. So when we get back, we'll shrink by one, but we're going to take a break. I know we have a couple of people on hold right now. Hang on right where you are, and as soon as we get back in about 90 seconds, we'll talk to you and answer your questions here today about automobile accidents on Legal Access. Welcome back to Legal Access. We're talking about automobile accidents today. If you have any questions, make sure you give us a call. If you've been hurt in a wreck, today is the day to get your questions answered. 848-8080 is the phone number. It's right there on your screen. We do have a couple of callers who've been waiting patiently through our break. Let's go to Conway first of all. Dorothy was first. Hi, Dorothy. Thanks for hanging on. What's your question?
Hi. Yes, my question is, if there are two cars involved in an automobile accident, whose responsibility is it to make sure that all information is exchanged and both parties are satisfied, and then you can either A, go get out of everybody's way and take care of it on your own, or should you wait for a Horry County policeman, a state patrolman, or just somebody else to show up, one of the parties might be hurt. So what do you do in that instance?
Would you like me to take that, or
Sure,
either
yeah,
way?
go
So,
for
Dorothy, thank you for your call. I appreciate that. So, just a couple. You got a couple of questions within that question, so I'll try to take them one at a time. First of all, in Horry County, where we live, the people who respond to accidents are going to be either municipal police, so City of Conway, City of Myrtle Beach, if it happens in the city limits. And then if it's outside the city limits, the actual county police do not respond typically, which is unusual. It's usually Highway Patrol. So those are going to be your two agencies, but you don't have to worry about that. When someone calls 911, which is going to be your easiest method to get that report started, they're going to choose the right agency to report to your accident scene. As far as your question about who is, or what the legal obligation is, that's one side, then there's the practical side. The legal side is that you technically, unless there's great bodily injury, do not have to stay at the scene of the accident so long as everyone has exchanged information and is in agreement on that. There's nothing that requires you to stay unless there's bodily injury. The smartest thing to do, however, is to call a police officer, because what will happen is they will come, they will issue a third-party neutral report that says who the people are, who their insurance companies are, and they'll make a preliminary finding of fault, which will help you if you're not at fault, certainly later on in the case. But you know, you do have the option if it's property damage only, nobody's hurt, and particularly if it's a busy day, they're an hour out to come to the scene, and you need to get to work or school. You do have the option to pull over and exchange information, but you run the risk of possibly I've even seen situations where people say an accident didn't happen.
Yep.
And so I don't know if you want to piggyback on that, or
Yeah, or give information that is not truthful.
correct. Yep.
So yeah, it's always best, I think, to call the police, call 911, have the police come out and do a report, just like Robert said. And yeah, you know, also you can just move off the roadway is an option as well, so that you're not in the roadway. You might stay, you know, and wait, but just not in the roadway if there's not injury. Is also an option. But yeah, I mean,
And it is,
Right.
and Dorothy, just real quickly on that, it is illegal if someone does flee the scene of an accident, regardless of whether there's only property damage or bodily injury. So there is a legal obligation, no matter who's at fault, no matter what happened. If two cars collide, there has to be at least an exchange of information, and then possibly remaining at the scene depending. But your safest bet is to call the police.
Absolutely. Dorothy, thanks for calling in today. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's go to Myrtle Beach now. Robert is on the line. Hi, Robert. Thanks for hanging on. What's your question today?
My question is, what is the typical commission fee that you guys charge? I mean, when somebody gets a settlement, you usually take 20 or 30%, right?
Well, first of all, he's got a great name. I have to say that. Robert, who's a caller, thank you so much for calling.
from Robert to Robert.
I'll take the first one. Would you like to take this one?
Sure, yeah. So I think that it's pretty standard across the board for personal injury type matters. Usually the fee is 1/3 of whatever settlement is recovered if we're able to settle. And this is at least for our firm, but I do think
Right.
that it is pretty standard. It's 1/3 if we're able to settle the case without having to file a lawsuit. If we did have to file suit, then the fee does increase to 40%, which is just a reflection on how much more time and work is involved in preparing a case for trial.
Yeah, and I think what's important in that too, Brittany, and for Robert, if you're still out there, is that whenever we charge these fees, we've charged these fees because we have already vetted the case, we've already screened the case, and we've determined that it's not only in your best interest, but our best interest too, to take the case. Because
Absolutely.
there are routinely, I'm sure Brittany deals with it all the time, people who come in where, for whatever reason, whether it's insurance coverage related, who's at fault, or what type of injuries it were, that it's not to either party's benefit.
Yep.
And we tell people that all the time.
Absolutely.
So we're in it to try to get the most we can for our client. Certainly we need to keep our lights on too.
Right.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we wouldn't stay in business if we didn't do a good job for people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Robert, to piggyback on that, I've seen statistics as far as the amount of money that you would get from a settlement if you try to handle it yourself versus having an attorney involved. And the amount that you get handling it yourself is substantially less. So regardless of what the percentage is, it's well worth it to have an attorney helping you out in a case like this. Sounds like I'm doing a commercial, sorry.
We'll take it.
Going back to what Dorothy had to say as far as assigning fault, and you guys kind of touched on that briefly. I mean, if you have a police officer and they've assigned fault and say that they have found you at fault in the initial report, but you kind of plead your case and say, hey, no, really, this is what happened, and they're able to go back and find some video and find out that you're not at fault. I mean, obviously, but if you're at fault, I mean, does that just put an end to any kind of a possible case that you might have?
So no, it doesn't. I think Robert mentioned earlier that it's kind of a preliminary finding. So, you know, you kind of touched on, Dave, that there's a possibility that the police might go back and amend their report. They might change it. They might view other footage or, you know, hear more information or find more evidence that indicates that they should go back and change their initial finding, and so they can amend that report. Also, even if they didn't amend that report, say they come to an attorney, say they come to our office and bring with them the report that shows that they're at fault, that's not just that, you know, the end all, be all, end all, however they say that. You know, we can certainly still work with that, you know, depending on the situation. And you know, at the end of the day, the police report is not something that comes in as evidence at trial. So that police officer was not there to not actually witness it. They're taking that information and putting it into a report, and it's not actually something that's introduced as evidence at trial. So.
As far as insurance companies are concerned, Robert, do they look at the possible percentage of fault as far as an accident is concerned?
So yes, they do. That's a good question. So in South Carolina, and every state is different, by the way, on this. So in South Carolina, we follow a modified comparative negligence analysis. And so what that means in our state is, in some states, if you're only 1% at fault for the accident, you can't recover anything. And that's our northern neighbor, North Carolina, for example. If you were in an accident across the border, that would be the case. In South Carolina, we have a system where, so long as your fault does not exceed the fault of the other driver, so as long as it's 50% or less, you still have the right to recovery in the case. Now, that may reduce your recovery by that percentage. So for example, just to keep figures simple, if you were to cover $100 in a case and you were 25% at fault, you would actually only net $75 because of your fault allocation. But that's some pretty, we're getting into more complicated stuff that an attorney would help you with.
Yeah, I was told there'd be no math, so sorry to think about that. All right, tell you what, we're going to run to a break here real quick. We still got more than 10 minutes left in the show, so if you have any last minute questions about automobile accidents, don't wait till the last minute. Go ahead and give us a call now during the break. When we get back, we'll answer those questions here for you. On our panel today, we've got Brittany Jones, Robert Sansbury, as we're talking about automobile accidents here on Legal Access. Welcome back to Legal Access. We're talking about automobile accidents. If you've been in a wreck, if you've been hurt in a wreck, or if you're just talking about anything else, make sure and give us a call. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show. Plenty of time to get you on the air here. Phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. And if you've gotten into an accident and you've been injured by somebody who later gets found to be a DUI, or maybe if they flee a scene and get charged and convicted of hit and run, how does that affect your case?
Yeah. So that can definitely have a big effect on your case, and largely the reason why it can be for a number of reasons, but largely because you know, whenever we're looking at the damages and what type of recovery you can have, you know, normally with a case we're looking at, you know, kind of general negligence, and the damages are going to be based a lot on what your injuries are, what your medical bills are. But with a DUI or a case similar to that, we're also looking at a different type of damages for punitive damages, which are meant to punish that other driver. And that's, you know, kind of takes it next level, if you will. So we always say kind of, if you have to be in an accident, you know, if you're hit by a drunk driver, you know, it kind of opens the door to more than you would have access to otherwise. So,
but I think the policy considerations behind that are important to address slightly. You know, it's not. This isn't necessarily a slot machine where we're pulling money is coming out. The reason Brittany's saying that, and she's totally right. When you've got somebody who fiddles with the radio knob for just a second and bumps somebody in the rear, they cause an accident. That's an entirely different scenario than a drunk driver who runs a red light or something like that. I mean, we're in a whole different category at that point, and the law just distinguishes that in that situation we're going to treat that differently. So. Well,
yeah, and the punitive damage is meant to punish them because it's like an intentional act. You know, they've kind of there's some intent behind the fact that they've chosen to drink and chosen to get behind the wheel of a car. We
talked about underinsured UIM earlier in the show. Now. As far as South Carolina is concerned, the minimum amount of insurance that you have to be on the road legally is $25,000 coverage. So if I get into an accident, it's the other person's fault and they've got minimum coverage, if I go to the hospital, stay one night, get imaging done, I've already used up that $25,000. So that's why UIM is important, that you need to be able to get that for yourself to cover what their insurance won't.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Well, and medical bills, and you brought that up, can be kind of complicated how that all shakes out. But essentially, there's a sticker price of the medical bill, which is what we present in evidence, is what the law says is that are the damages caused. But in the back end, as lawyers, something that Brittany and I do all the time is we negotiate those bills. So we're going to do two things. We're trying to, at all times, increase the amount of recovery to the client and then decrease what they owe in the back end. And ultimately, those two things are going to add up to more money in our client's pocket.
Just another reason why the percentage of those fees is worth it, you know. But yeah, that is right. That, you know, why you want to have UIM. You know, in South Carolina, we're allowed to stack those policies, and that's how, you know, as far as the client's recovery, we can stack those. So you get the liability policy, which might be just that $25,000 if they only have minimum limits, plus whatever UIM you might have, and then, you know, to take it even a step further, if you have multiple vehicles on your policy, then there's, you know, potential for stacking it multiple times. And there's all different ways, you know, that can happen, which again, why you want to have an attorney who's very well versed, you know, in handling these types of cases, justifies our percentage.
And something else you won't think about, but I mean, if you actually live with somebody else and you don't have enough insurance, you might be able to use their insurance to be able to help you out as well.
That is true, yeah. In South Carolina, we can stack, we call it resident relative. So it has to be someone that you live with, that you're related to, who has maybe has their own auto policy. We can also stack theirs. So if you, I'm trying to think of an example, you might live with you know, an elderly family member or something who might have their own policy, or a teenager who ends up with their own policy, then absolutely you can reach to theirs as well.
That's something that the average person wouldn't think of. Hey, you know, this person wasn't involved in the accident, but I'm going to use their insurance to help me out. Yeah,
sometimes we ask clients about it, and I'm sure you get this too, Robert. Or they're like, well, why are you asking about my, you know, my mother-in-law who lives here with us, you know?
Only got a couple of minutes left, but also something that in the industry would be called a third-party case. If you're driving and you're working at the time and you get injured in a car accident, not only is it a workers' comp case, but it then could turn into a personal injury case as far as automobiles are concerned.
Absolutely. So if you have like you said, if you're on the job, which the buzzwords are in the course and scope of employment, and if you're at the time working, things can get a little complicated if you have a work vehicle and, you know, you've parked it at your house at night. That's going to be a little different than if you're actually going to or coming from a job site. But if you are, absolutely, the first step is going to be workers' compensation, which is usually going to be the primary payer for your medical bills. And you definitely want an attorney to navigate those two things, because you're going to have two cases going in tandem. And if you're not careful, you can really mess that up.
All right, I only got a couple of minutes left here, but do also want to thank Ian McGuire, who was here earlier but had to take off and do some lawyerly things. So so Ian's not here right now, in case you turned in early and just tuned back in and say, hey, what happened? Did you guys shrink? Yeah, we actually did. Real quick, in the last minute that we have left here, I mean, we talked about swapping information. You know, usually you're going to call a police officer, but there might be some people who say, oh, dude, don't call let's just swap info. I mean, what's your advice if somebody comes up to you after you've had a wreck and say, hey, let's just swap info? What should you say to them?
I think the advice is the advice you give everybody in every situation. You have to go with your gut. You have to go with what's the right thing and the wrong thing. If you've got a very minor fender bender, clearly nobody's hurt. You've clearly got two honest people. You've still got to make a judgment call. Nothing's 100%, because even in that situation, if you take a picture of their insurance card and they sign a note that says I'm at fault and you exchange all the information you can, there's no guarantee. The only guarantee is to call a police officer to report the accident. So you just have to decide how much risk you'd like to take on that.
Yeah.
Appreciate you calling in here today. Appreciate you watching. When we get back together next week, we're going to be talking about real estate laws. If you are thinking of buying or selling any kind of properties, next week's all about you. If you have any questions in advance, you can email us, legalaccess@WMBFnews.com. If not, we'll see you next Thursday. For Brittany Jones from the McGuire Law Firm, and also for Robert Sansbury, appreciate you watching here today, and for Ian McGuire, who disappeared halfway through the show. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next Thursday. Real estate is our topic. I'm Dave Priest. See you then.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your attorney. The nature of any legal issue may depend on a multitude of factors. Therefore, the information provided in this program is purposefully broad and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact and retain an attorney in order to obtain case-specific legal advice.